Today is October 3rd. This is the first day of the workshop on Thursday morning.
Thank you. One of the things that's tricky, she asked, should I close the door? And we'll have to eventually. This is a very tricky office to maintain temperature in. And that it's going to, if I'm getting, like, it's going to get up to 75 or 80 today. Well, everything's closed, even though it'd be nice to have the windows open. And once the sun changes, and I know we can open them up. But this is a tricky room to keep the temperature correct, particularly when we start getting bodies in the room and older women who feel the heat a little bit more than some other people. We do have this air conditioning right behind Anne, which is pretty effective, but it's noisy. So it almost can't be run during the workshop. We do have the fan as well. So whenever we can have the door open, I think we're gonna have it open, but as soon as it starts getting personal, we'll close the door. And we'll just group monitor that a little bit. Hello, everyone. This is the beginning of your basic Constellation training with Leslie Nix, first residency. It's good to have you all here. It's really nice. I've been working really hard getting ready for this, and I know you have too with your travel plans and readings and whatnot. So just take a moment and look at each other. Just notice. And we are missing one person, Christine. I don't know why she's not here, but she did send an email this morning. She would miss today and tomorrow. She does have a small child, so I'm a little wondering whether that has something to do with it. Okay, so just hold that there's a seventh who also belongs. Okay. I'm going to start out with some logistics just because, okay? And then we're going to get into some introductions and opening ritual and blah, blah, blah. And let you a little bit know how this residency is going to go. So you found the kitchenette. Please do not use any of the coffee, the Keurig stuff. I should have said that earlier. I caught Judith in the middle of cleaning it. Our subletter is going to be delighted at how clean his Keurig is. I sublet out this office, and so the Keurig doesn't belong to us. You can use the little refrigerator in there. The tea is all available. The cups and plates can all be used, okay? I just ask at the end of each day to tidy up a little bit, put cups away and whatnot. The bathroom, as most of you have discovered, is all the way down the hallway. If you go one more door past the women's bathroom, there's a brand spanking new kitchenette. They're upgrading this building. There's a lot of deferred maintenance, and the carpet is such a blessing in the hallway. It was so foul. It had not been, so just, you can't appreciate it the way I can appreciate the hallway carpeting. It's just gorgeous. And the walls are all repainted in the hallway, which is quite nice. But you can also see a lot of, like the stairwell that you came in, they took off the old burlap wallpaper, but they haven't put anything new up yet. But the kitchenette's brand new. It's lovely. It has a microwave. It has a larger refrigerator where you can keep stuff. So that's there for you. That's all of the logistics. I do just want to say one word that I mentioned in the email around logistics. Parking. This street parking is infinitely free. However, as you saw this morning, on weekdays, getting a parking spot there is really, really, really hard. So even I was here early, did not get a parking spot on this stretch. I'm in the more residential loop up here, which is 2 hours. I cannot tell you how many times I've parked there, forgotten, and later in the day found no tickets. This is not a neighborhood, apparently, that they really have their eye on and that they're bothering to ticket very much compared to some other neighborhoods. Having said that, there's no guarantees. So I'm going to try and aim for around 12 o'clock, giving people a chance to move their cars if they want to. Some spots should open up as some of the people have left for work, et cetera, et cetera. So So that's one thing about parking. And then on the weekend, it's not an issue at all because it becomes infinite parking on Saturday and Sunday on the loop as well. The tent city, which is looking particularly spectacular this morning, I have to say. For those of you who are not in Oakland, what you need to know is that in terms of addressing homelessness, you can find it on their website. They have decided their way of dealing with it is allowing these encampments to be set up, to not take them down, and to provide them with services in context. So that's why there are porta potties, garbage pickup, stuff like that. The reality is that they're doing the first half, but they're not doing the second half. It's a human health crisis in the making. It is really tragic that this is their solution to homelessness, is to have people living in such unsafe and unhygienic situation. And I live over there. I walk over here all the time. I never feel unsafe. I do have my awareness up. I don't park south of the downhill of the building. I just don't do it. I always make sure I'm parking somewhere up here. And I invite everyone here to the degree of an open heart about all that you can get available to, and to think systemically about it, which is what we're here to do, right? To not just think about it in terms of those people and that location, but what are all the systems, between fighting wars and, the drug epidemic and our mental health care and the housing crisis and, all the things that are part of it, to think systemically. And even, one of the things I don't like of being here, I'm very irked about it. It's very inappropriate for the location, et cetera, et cetera. And it is better that we people are made uncomfortable by having it in our midst rather than having it in corners where we don't get to be disturbed by it. I think at some level, it is incumbent upon us to allow ourselves to be made uncomfortable by this, because if we're not, we won't rally for a solution. Mm-hmm. Any comments? Or I have to say that up front. And by the way, this was not here when I first signed up for this lease and so this is all new. You can imagine how the Yelp reviews for this motel are being impacted. It's, the businesses are having a really hard time as a result. But any thoughts or concerns about all that?
I'm a little concerned.
Yeah.
Only because I don't have a car,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm staying up here like 5 or 10 minute walk
Mm-hmm.
up here.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just gonna ask now for if anybody could give me a ride back after tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think once again, well, it's not dark at 6 o'clock yet, but nonetheless, just ask. We've got a bunch of cars in the room. You live
Okay.
really close by.
Well, for the isn't it your Constellation tonight?
Yeah. Yep. So someone who's planning to drive to my Constellation evening, if you would be willing to drive her, and I can commit to driving you home from the Constellation.
Okay. I'll be around here. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care of each other that way. The closest food are 2 gas stations down here. They have little quick marts, if you don't want to walk right by the encampment, you can go around, go down to MacArthur and over. But I walk down there all the time and get a candy bar or, whatever. Further is Piedmont, which is still a reasonable walk. Not Piedmont the town, but Piedmont the street, Piedmont Avenue. It's about 4 blocks right over there. And there's a lot of restaurants. There's a little grocery if you prefer to have lunch made out of grocery type things. And we can talk more about that then. And if you want to get in a car and drive during lunch hour, there are even more places to have lunch. But you can have lunch here. And there's also kind of a little funny park over there that I quite like to walk around. It's got a bit of kind of the interface between residences and an old feeling of what Oakland might have been like before it was a city, with some redwoods and some oak trees and some blackberries and a stream going through. It's when I stumbled on it, I'm like, how is this not all paved over? So that's a place where when I try and be really disciplined about going for a walk during lunch, because that's very important for my mental health. That's usually I just go over there and I do a nice little walk over there. Any other logistical things?
BART station, is there?
BART's the closest is MacArthur. It's a good 20-minute walk.
30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I walked it this morning.
Okay. Okay. It's flat, which is nice. But it's it's over that direction.
Okay.
We're on the biggest hill right here of the
I have
whole
a
walk.
car with that I can take.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say for today, I need to leave early because I have a concert I'm directing. But just depending, do you know when lunch break is going to be?
Try and make the lunch break 12 to 1:30 every day. And then it'll be give or take 15 minutes or so.
Okay. I may leave then. I think I have to, I have to get out of here by 3, then I get stuck in traffic. But
Okay.
I
We
will
will
stay
see.
as long as I can.
Okay, good. Do that. Stay as long as you can.
I will. Thank
Okay.
you.
And yes, letting the group know when you're going to be late or absent, things like that. Very helpful. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to invite short introductions, which I will role model. At that point, I should probably close the door. These are short because part of the goal of the first couple of days is using some of the tools of Constellations to do double service and introducing you to the work of Constellations, but also helping you get to know each other better so you can have a better sense of each other a little bit. But it feels weird to spend half the day not doing some kind of an introduction process. So here's what I would like you to do, really simple. This is something I learned from Francesca Mason-Boring. Every once in a while, I'm going to name my Constellation teachers. And if you're interested enough, you can look them up. You can find their writings. You can ask me more about them. You will hear me quote from Francesca Mason-Boring a lot. She's a very important Constellation teacher, learned under Bert Hellinger. She is in Washington State, and she's half Shoshone and half European, which is strangely unusual in the American scene. It's a pretty white group of people who do constellations here. So she has a lot to give us. But this is something she brings from the Shoshone tradition. I saw her do it, and I'm like, ooh, could use that. So when you start in introducing yourself, say, my name is Leslie, daughter of John and Helen, and I'll just role model it, okay? And then the next person go. And we're not going to do circles, but whoever goes last, just say, Grace, would you go next? So you're not sitting there going, oh, 1 to go, 4 to go, 3 to go, 2 to go, 1 to go, which doesn't tend to support being in the present. And really hear each other. Hear these introductions as kind of a constellation. So follow that with your preferred pronoun, okay, which is becoming more and more standardized in our community, which is really, really important, I think. If you don't know what that means, it's just saying she, her, they, them, him, his. It's a way to be inclusive of people who are using different kinds of pronouns these days. Okay, and believe me, if you start leading constellations, this will be something you'll need to be comfortable with. Where you're from, and you can take that whatever you mean. Where I came from this morning, where my people come from, don't worry about it. We're going to be learning more about where your people come from. Your constellation background and interest, and something about yourself, like if you're a mom with 3 little kids, or things like that. Just a little bit. This is very short, 3 minutes each. Okay, so I will role model. So my name is Leslie, daughter of John and Helen, granddaughter of Lenig and Helen, and Anna and John. My preferred pronouns are she and her. I come from about 10 blocks over there, but originally East Coast, north of New York City. You guys know my constellation background and interest, so I'm not going to go into that, but I've been doing this 10 years, okay, and worked with a lot of different people. And something about myself. I have a cat named Rufus, who is my constellation assistant. I was doing a constellation about this training yesterday as preparation, and he joined in. And his main contribution was to say, Leslie, you're taking this too seriously, have more fun. Because he started tearing up the cards and so that's about Rufus. Okay? And if you can't remember the things, I'll remind you.
My name is Anna, she, her. I'm the daughter of Antonius and Ursula, and I'm the granddaughter of Ferdinand, Elisabeth, Elfriede, and Joseph. I'm born in Germany, and I flew in this morning from LA. I lived there since 17 years. I think I went to my first constellation when I was about 18. Now I'm 54. So in Germany, it's, I think, a little bit more known. Yeah, since then I am going to constellations, and I have 3 children and 1 dog. And I'm working as an artist in residence in an elementary school.
And then you get to choose the next one.
Judith.
Okay. Hi, my name is Judith. I am the daughter of Melvin and Betty, otherwise named by her mother Badonna, and the granddaughter of Bessie and Samuel and Arthur and Anna. And I'm a San Francisco native. I'm she, her, are my preferred pronouns. And music is my first language. And I've been a professional musician, performer, and teacher coach in various vises for the past 40-something years. And I have 2 adult sons and 2 delicious little granddaughters, and a really wonderful husband.
In your constellation background.
Oh, I went to Constellation in somewhere in the summer on a Sunday and had my mind blown. It was 4 group constellations that Leslie led. And then I was really interested. I found out there was a training that started on that Tuesday, and I jumped in. And I'm just fascinated by this whole process. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Kelly.
Who is behind that mask? Actually see your face.
Yeah,
we don't know if you're grinning or you're sticking out your tongue at people. Or
So my name's Kelly Riccio. I go by she, her. I'm the daughter of Anthony and Patricia, or Tony and Trish. Granddaughter of Adriana, Pasquale, Margaret, and George. Introduction to Gestalt was constellational Gestalt weekend at Esalen, which again blew my mind. It was amazing. I'm really intrigued by it, and I spent a month doing a live-in workshop there in it, and just really special time. And I'm really fascinated by how it works and wanted to just do more of it, but also I'm intrigued by what it takes to kind of help a group go through the process. And I am from Chicago originally, and I now live in San Francisco for the last 20 years. And where I'm from, am I forgetting something?
No, that's it.
That's pretty much it.
And how are you feeling now? Just you said you felt not so great when you woke up. How's that going?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like weird. I was just really dizzy this morning when I got up, and it's never happened. But I'm in this mode where I'm just glitching all the time on everything. So I'm kind of just assuming this is one of the glitches that's going on. Because I'm so looking forward to this whole process in this class. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
And choose someone to go next.
Danica? Oh, Dinka. Sorry, Dinka.
Dinka. Dinka, yes.
Dinka.
My name is Dinka. I'm a daughter of Ivan and Stefanka, and granddaughter of Dina, Gyuro, Todor, and Donka. I'm originally from Bulgaria. Since I became a teenager, I don't know, like energy came to me to run away from my family as far as I can, and I still don't know why. I had been to family constellations first in Bulgaria, and it was 2 years ago, so I don't have long history in doing constellations, but since the first time I participated in a group constellations, I knew that I want to become a facilitator, because it is something that I noticed working as an accountant in a corporate world and seeing how teams organize themselves, and why some people, like, why do we struggle sometimes so much to perform in team environment. I thought it's something to do with the dynamics that we create, even though I don't particularly understand so much how it goes. I'm single. I came here with a green card. I won green card lottery when I was in Bulgaria. I came to the US because of that. 6 years I stayed in South Florida, Miami area. Then I said, this is not the real United States. So I moved to California, stayed here for 6 years. Still don't know why. Yeah, the other question that I wonder is, so one is like the corporate, I'm interested in how dynamics in the corporate teams, when people work together, how it works. And another question for me is why I haven't been successful in creating family. I'm single still. So
Okay.
I think this is it, right?
Thank you. You got one or the other one to choose?
Grace.
You? I'm Grace. I'm a she and a her. I'm a native Californian. I am the daughter of Frank and Joy, and the granddaughter of Frank and Mary and Tony and Madeline. I've represented in maybe a dozen constellations for, what has it even been now, 20 20 to 25 years, I have facilitated group and individual process, and I've used a systemic perspective. My training in consulting and coaching is a systemic one. So constellations make perfect sense for me. I feel a great attraction. What else wants to be said? I also engage in, I do a lot of work with fields of consciousness and engage in ceremony. I'm fresh from an Indian and a Hindu and African ceremony, so I'm still got the remnants of that. And so I also am enjoying the introduction I got in Leslie's, took the 5-week class to using altars as constellations, and I've been playing with that a little bit. I think that's it.
Nice. Would you call on the last one?
Oh, yes. Serena, please.
I'm Serena, daughter of Layla and David. Granddaughter of Salwa and Alif and Catherine, and I don't actually know my grandpa's name. It's really sad. And let's see, I'm from Washington State, and I flew in this morning. I live near Mount Rainier. I'm a snowboarder. I'm a she, her pronoun. Constellations. I've been doing them for a while, maybe like 10 years or so, but then with a different teacher, and then not in the last couple of years. So with the intent to do a training with her, but she just never did it. So I kept going to them, but it didn't materialize. So here I am now. Did I cover all the things?
Yeah, you did.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everybody. So just take a moment and just notice now. We know each other a little bit, not much. You may have forgotten half of what you already heard. That's okay. No? Take a moment. This is a little bit of my NLP background. Just imagine the you on Sunday night, February 2nd, which is the last night of this training. And look at this group and imagine them on that night. Now, I promise by then, some of you would have gotten really mad at each other, really bond with a few, very touched by the stories, very touched by being supported in your vulnerability. And just a lot of stuff will have happened. Might have gotten cranky with me a few times. Yeah. But also a lot of learning and growth and, next steps. So just say hello to your future self. Hi, future self. Hello. And just feel the journey you're starting. Yeah. Okay. One other logistics thing I realized I just did want to say. I need to say a thing about the chairs. You're asking questions like, why do corporations, why does it get so conflicted and weird? Something as simple as chairs can have enormous emotional meaning and carry all kinds of stuff. It is, and I've done this training a few times, and the chairs are, God bless these chairs and what they've been through. So I want to just a few norms for us to sort of live into. First is if there are people with real back problems, that if the group could be generous with letting them have the chair that works for them and their back problems, whether they're the first one here or the second one or the last one here. Okay. So does anyone need to go on the record of needing a particular kind of a chair?
I actually need to change chairs.
Yeah, you've been looking a little schlumpy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do that one.
Do you need a firm chair or a folding one?
I think I want a folding one.
For your legs, the folding one actually might work. The problem with the folding ones, and we've got more. So
I might use two of them.
is that
And I
they're,
might-
Some over there.
sorry.
they're short and whatnot. So would you like this chair?
Yeah.
Yes.
someone want
Okay,
this
so
one?
we'll just swap them out.
Could also possibly to sit part-time on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna end up on the floor.
Yes. When we're doing like group discussions and
Okay.
stuff.
Sure.
I will follow your lead.
Judith has a lot of physical issues. I didn't say mental or emotional issues.
but we all thought
But these chairs, as much as they're not, the folding chairs are not comfortable for a lot of people, because you may have already noticed, like this comes real short. Like it could come out another inch or so to support the bum, and they're really close to the ground. But for us, for the shorter people, it actually is kind of a good fit. And then for some people, I had one person who had to have that chair all the time for his back. He just had to have the sort of flat chair. Anyone else have physical needs?
It's pretty sturdy. I can see at the break. I think right now I just need to be on the floor.
And then after that, my apologies. First come, first served. Make it real. If it's really important, the cushy chairs are kind of the focus for a lot of this energy.
Yeah.
They're my client chairs. They sit in the corner usually. If you really need to have one of those chairs, then I invite you to be early.
Oh, we can change during the day.
Yeah, and changing. But people get really into their chair and they're nesting in their spot, and so I get that and I honor that. And basically, the choices are the cushy chairs, and then 2 sort of hard chairs, and then the folding chairs. We also have wooden folding chairs, but I can't imagine anyone would choose those before any of the others. You can try them out if you think they might fit you, but they're not usually too comfortable chairs. Okay, I had to say that about the chairs. Okay, guess what we're gonna do? First constellation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not a full constellation. Okay. What I'm also going to be doing, so most of you have seen classic personal constellations. That's mostly what you've seen. Grace referred to altar constellations, which is another way of thinking about it, but there's a lot of different ways to use this amazing structure that Bert Hellinger came upon. And I want to try and expose you to a lot of different ways of doing it so that you can be creative with it. Yeah? So this one is going to be, give me 1 second. And this is roughly a list in order of priority, sort of. I mean, there's no perfect version of this, but D is for those of you who plan to have future clients. If you don't worry about it. These are roles that I'm listing. Why did I have to choose modality? That's such a long word. Why is it not have a nice shortening acronym like NLP or EFT? Okay. And then what I'm going to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have one more than the people in the room because I came up with these categories when I was planning for one more person, but that's okay. That's no problem. And I'm just going to put them in a circle. So now I'm just putting A, B, okay? But they line up with these things. And by the way, this generally is going to be in the middle of the room. Just watch out for the cord around the microphone. And everyone back just to get it out of the way. Okay. So, everyone stand up. You'll be able to finish this list later. And all we're going to do is we're going to start out by honoring kind of the system that you're stepping into by doing this training with some of our elders, some of our peers, future clients, and everybody here. The students, C is all of you. Okay, it's a corporate representation. Okay. Any other questions about this? Or because what we're going to do is I'm going to invite you to step on a card, feel that role. Like I'm going to be on A, so I'm going to start out with your all of and mine, everyone's ancestors here. I'll just note that. Feel what that's like. This is going to be silent. We're going to have the experience a little bit. Then we will bow to each other. And then we'll go to the next card. So you can experience all of these spots and feel what the system feels like when we're including everything. Okay? So just choose. And one is going to be blank at any given time because that's okay. It's still there. Okay? So just choose one. Notice which one you're standing on. What did I get this wrong?
You're 7.
You're the 7. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. No, I'm a Constellation teacher. I'm not a math teacher. Okay, so just notice which card you're on and just feel what it feels like from here. And then look at the others. And in fact, it's useful to actually have it right in front of you so people can peek at, oh, so I know, okay, that's the future client's video. And just notice who you're looking at a little bit. And what each one feels like. Who you're most attracted to, who you notice the most, who you feel bigger than, who you feel smaller than, who you feel the same size as. And I sent you all the email, but this is all in the context of this one having passed away just last week. Bert Hellinger, right? And just everyone bow to everyone else. Hold that for a second with respect. And then come back up. And whenever we're doing constellations with cards, I always recommend step off into a neutral spot rather than stepping right into the next one and then step into the next one. And then everyone bow. And now step off into a neutral spot and then step into the next one. And everyone bow to one another. And then off into a neutral spot. And then into another one. Just have to go on the record as the future clients. I'm so glad you're all doing this. It's like, yay, so glad they're doing this.
Are these people like we know?
No.
When it says Constellation peers, what does that mean?
It just means all the people who are your peers in the work out there in the world.
Versus like our student group.
Yeah. It includes that, but it's about the fact that there's a lot of people out there who do this work, who you can feel you're coming into a collegium with them.
Cool.
Yeah. And then do a bow. And then off into neutral. And step into the next one. And then bow to everyone. And stop off in the neutral. And into the next one. And then a bow. And then step off into the last one. And then bow to everybody. Little love fest we're having here. And then step off. And if anyone would like to help me by picking up the cards. Okay. Shares, what did you notice? We're not going to completely process that, but what are some things you noticed about that?
It was good to be you.
It was Bert Hellinger and I had a very serious moment there. It was very intense. I'm like, dude, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh,
I started out in the students, and it was just kind of one big question mark for me, the experience. I don't know if anyone else, when you were that, if you had anything clear. It was just like nobody knew what to think, and I don't know how much I'm projecting my experience. But
in response to that, when I was in the peers and colleagues, I had a lot of attention on the students, and I was thinking, welcome.
Yeah, me too.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome.
Uh-huh.
It's good to have you. So I don't know if you step back into that role and receive that welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool being.
I got the real shivers stepping into the ancestors and Bert Hellinger and students. Like that was like, it felt like a sequence of like just kind of something settling or coming up. It was, yeah. But yeah, some of them did have a more confident kind of feel to them, just kind of like, okay. The future clients, it felt grateful.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you're all doing this.
Mm.
It's really nice. And it's like blah 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 Bert Hellinger. I don't care. I'm just glad you're all doing this. Like it's not their job to understand the lineage and that sort of stuff. They just want help.
I love the cool exercise to get to stand in each spot. I really like that. And then feel the differences. You check yourself a little.
Yeah. And feeling, in this role I connect with that one, but in this role I connect with that one. Or,
Pretty cool.
Yeah. This is a great one to do with corporate groups. You know,
Yes.
HR, personnel,
Mm.
finances, board, and just have everyone feel all of them. You don't even have to explain the field, or that's so you can skip all the woo-woo. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I want to say at this point, which is that I've done 2 short rituals. One, naming, my name is Leslie, I'm the daughter of blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's one. That's a constellation ritual in a way. We just did another one as kind of a setting the tone of the day. Later today, I'm going to send around a clipboard. After today, the students are going to do the opening and closing rituals. Just really short things that their goal is to open or to close. And you know how rituals do that. I mean, you have a feeling for what kind of allows us to sort of start with a container. Something I'm going to be talking a lot about is to do a good group, you need to set a clear container. And one way to set a clear container is to have a clear beginning and end. Okay. It's, whether you do it really simply or really complexly. That helps the group go, oh, I have a sense that we're up to something coherent. Right? You now have some examples, and I'll do the closing one today for as well. Okay? But starting tomorrow, I want you guys to just start with something really simple or end with something simple. Again, I want to give you as many opportunities to practice as possible. Okay, so I'm going to launch into a little bit of opening context setting. Yes?
Is this a Zoom in moment? Are you going to be?
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea. Thank you. Our AV person is so on it. Okay, each day there's going to be lecture, watching constellations, healing work, and practice. Each day there's going to be a morning and an afternoon session with an hour and a half break in the middle, with theoretically a 15-minute break in the middle of the morning and the middle of the afternoon, but that's always a little theoretical. It's based on bladder status. It's really what one's like, I know we just had a break a half hour ago, but I have to be now. Okay, that sort of thing. Major themes. This is where the handouts are going to start. Not going to go through this, but I just I feel like some people care about this sort of thing. So the major themes that we're going to be dealing with in the course over the course of the 3 residencies. One of the challenges of planning this residency was having a sense of all the things you need to get started. And the fact is, I can't fit it into 4 days. So some things you need to get started aren't going to happen until the 2nd residency. It's just the way it is. And you can, yeah, give me the extra. So I'm not going to go through this. If that's the sort of thing you want to be able to track, these are the main themes. The main themes for this weekend are the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullets, and then skipping down to primary and secondary emotions. Okay. 2nd residency is going to be our fun weekend, trauma and attachment theory. Woohoo! And the 3rd one's going to be a bit of a grab bag on topics. Okay. Okay. By the end of this residency, I do hope you will leave with the basic concepts under your belt and some opening practice. It is going to be a little bit of drinking through a fire hose this morning, if you know that metaphor. I'm going to be giving you a lot of information, not all of which you're going to be able to integrate this weekend. It's just the way it is until you have more chance to apply it. If anyone actually got to the interviewing document that I sent out, if you went, I don't understand half of what's in this document, it totally makes sense. You needed context to understand some of what's in that document, for instance. So that's going to be some of what's going on this weekend, as well as you're all good. Everyone here is going to have a constellation this weekend from me. Okay. So both as part of your own healing process, but also as your student process of being able to watch constellations and participate in them. Plan for giving and receiving constellations. Next, you're going to be practicing in ways that are building your facilitator skills this weekend, but you're not going to lead a full personal constellation this weekend. Next residency, you will. Okay. So everyone is going to do one in each of the next 2 residencies. And so having said that, everyone's a choice about this, and I'm going to talk more about that. I hope everyone will push themselves to facilitate and be willing to do it really badly, because it's the only way to learn. But no one is forced to do anything here. No one's forced to receive constellations. No one's forced to do constellations. No one's forced to represent, etc., etc. Okay? I want you to feel your willingness to go up against your comfort, but also you get to reserve your nose. Okay, that's really important. Students process, your learning will be nonlinear. Sorry for the left brain folk here, but it is not going to go like this for most of you. It's going to be like this. Okay. Also, everyone's learning is going to take different courses based on their learning styles and the backgrounds you bring to the work. Some of you have more exposure, some of you have less. The material, I seek to teach it in a way that has a certain sense to it, but in the end, that's also going to be nonlinear in a way. And, in response to questions and whatnot, I can end up going like, so. It may not always be the right topic for you at any given time. I invite you to just kind of flow with it a little bit. And definitely raise your hand when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're not understanding a concept or anything like that. Okay. I need to move into agreements a little bit. So this is something you've all, hopefully, I really, really hope you've had a chance to read it. Which is the student agreement. And I'm handing it out again. The reason I'm doing this is that I've always had a student agreement. Mostly it started out as something to cover the logistics like refund policies and crap like that, right? It's built over the years. And the main reason why I want to review this just a little bit, I'll take that, is that I find that about half the students just kind of don't pay too much attention to this. And it just makes everything really difficult because there's so much critical information in here. So I'm going to do something really annoying, is I'm going to have us read through this. and I'll have us skip over the pieces. We don't need to read together. We'll just start out with everyone doing kind of a paragraph and all the bullets underneath it. So would you start with this agreement is?
This agreement is in support of clarity and transparency, reaching the goals for the program, having fun, and feeling really good about working together.
And take the next one, Nika.
General goals of the training: to learn the basic theory of family constellations work, to move forward in your own personal systemic family healing, to develop confidence in your facilitation skills, for those who enroll in the business integration option, to get help establishing or growing constellation practice.
Please, yeah.
Program dates. The program runs from October 3rd to February 2nd. There are 3 4-day live workshops at this location: October 3rd to 6th, December 5th to 8th, January 31st to February 2nd. There are 4 3-hour online classes from 5 to 8 p.m. Tuesdays, Pacific time, October 15th, November 12th, December 17th, and January 7th. For those students who chose to enroll in the business integration option, there are also 4 3-hour online business classes, also 5 to 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays, October 22nd, November 19th, December 10th, and January 14th.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Isn't it January 30th for our last workshop here? Anyway, can we check that? Because it's 4 days, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Is
That's
that right?
incorrect. It's January 30th through February 2nd. Thank you. It's whatever that Thursday is.
Okay.
Good eye. I love the eagle eyes in the room. And when it's someone else's training, I'm the one doing that with them. Wasn't it the 30th? And they're like, oh, you. No, I love that. Thank you.
Other program elements: free one-to-one video streaming coaching calls for personal growth and/or facilitation coaching.
Which, by the way, is minimally, because you all met the requirements for getting an extra session. It's actually 4 now for everybody. And then for the people in the business integration, it's 4 plus 3, which is 7. Which means those of you in the business integration option should start scheduling your coaching now. Because it basically means 1 every other week. Yeah, for you people. Do continue, yes.
Peer study group, Facebook group for between class group conversations, recording of all workshops and private coaching calls, special prizes for any service, private 1-hour coaching session, which can be added $125 per session, 29% of the usual $175. Private group constellations, which can be added at $225 of the usual $300 price. 15% off all other workshops and programs, including the advanced training that begins right after this training, finishing saving $300 or more.
You got 1 more bullet.
Additional elements for business integration option participants: 3 more one-to-one coaching sessions, 4 more Zoom classes, and instructional business videos.
So, yes, please.
Does the 15% off also apply to the West Coast Intensive?
No, it does not. Sorry, that's a separate, it's not included in my business. I would love to be able to include that, but I cannot. Good question, thank you.
I have one too.
Yeah.
Is it, so we have all these 1-hour ones. We cannot combine them into a 2-hour.
You can.
You can.
Yeah, yeah. That's what, especially when you have 7 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But only online, not live. Okay. A few of the notes I want to just say about some of these things. Peer study group. I'm going to be doing a big housekeeping, there's usually a housekeeping section of every residency, right? I'm going to do a longer one on Saturday afternoon for this weekend, at which I will talk about peer study groups and stuff like that, okay? And more about what you can do in these coaching sessions and stuff like that. Facebook group, use it or don't. I've added some of you to the group if I've been able to find you on Facebook. If not, friend me, because the only way to get you into the group is if we're friends. You have to be Facebook friends. It's a good place to ask questions, start conversations. I sometimes post things, not the most active place, but it could be if the group made it one. What else about all this? Oh, and if anyone wants to add the business integration option and has not yet, you still can add it. Okay, so let me know ASAP if you are thinking about adding that. Okay, next person, you can skip the third to last bullet just because that's all about refund policies for cancellations before the training begins. So that's not relevant.
Cost payment and refund policy. Refer to your personal invoice for details on your fees.
Everyone know what I'm talking about there? What I sent you in the mail? Okay.
Varies depending upon time of registration and program choices. Payment plan. Deposit secures a place in the training. This is followed by 4 payments due on October 15, November 15, December 15, and January 15. PayPal invoices will be emailed to participants about the 10th of each month. Please let me know if you would prefer an alternate method of payment. If a payment needs to be late, student will inform Leslie as soon as possible and negotiate for a new payment plan. Leslie reserves the right to assign late fees if payments are late. 6 to 10 days, $35, 10 to 30 days, $70. After 30 days, an additional $20 per week. If student pays by credit card, student agrees to have card charged for unpaid services. Refund.
You can skip that bullet.
One. Okay.
Yeah.
If student must terminate the training in process, the student agrees to inform Leslie in writing, to have a conversation with Leslie before terminating, and to be open to possible ways to continue with the training, that there are no refunds of payment made up to the point of termination, and no further payments will be due as long as current payments are up to date. This program is non-transferable.
Any questions about any of that? Cool. Okay.
Certification. Students understand that there is no central certifying body for family constellations, so this training does not result in licensure. Nonetheless, for students who fulfill the basic requirements of the training and who demonstrate the basic facilitator skills by the end, Convivium Constellations will provide a certificate of constellation facilitation. All other participants will receive a certificate of participation. To qualify for Constellation Facilitation certification, students must participate in 75% plus of the 4-day residencies and Zoom classes, participate in 50% plus of peer study groups, use all of their private coaching sessions, demonstrate a basic understanding of the principles underlying constellation work, demonstrate a basic ability to lead individual and group constellations, demonstrate a basic capacity for self-reflection and commitment to personal growth. It is understood that for most students meeting the minimum attendance and participation requirements, the subjective criteria for certification is minimally demanding.
That's just kind of making clear those last 3 bullets are huge gray areas, right? And I'm just looking for basic minimum demonstration of those 3 principles. Yeah. Okay. Continue here.
Leslie's responsibilities.
Yep. Yeah. That may be your.
That's my form.
I bet that's your form. Cool.
That's so funny. Okay.
She mailed her student agreement. I'm sorry, but let's just honor the field. Yeah. As Serena starts to talk. It may not be that. But.
Okay, Leslie's responsibilities: to return phone calls and emails when humanly possible within 2 business days, to be on time for our sessions ready for you, to work diligently and expertly on the fulfillment of the training goals, to contact you and reschedule with you in a timely manner if she is unable to keep an appointment, to do her best to make sure any technology for classes and private sessions is ready to go, to inform you of any substantial times in which she is away or sick, to provide you with professional and ethical services at all times, to work productively with you in the case of any disagreement, and to be generally responsive to questions and student concerns, to be a role model of healthy leadership and taking responsibility for self in service to the group learning.
Okay. And then the next, since it's so long, just divide it in half between the two of you.
Please. Okay,
Students.
Okay. Students' responsibilities to return phone calls and emails when humanly possible within 2 business days, to take full responsibility for scheduling private coaching calls and having them completed by the end of the program, February the 2nd.
I just want to say a note about that. There's always a few of you who are like right on making coaching calls sessions, and others who just it kind of doesn't like remember to do it. And then, you see there's 2 weeks left of the course and you're like, I still have 3 sessions to use. That's really problematic, trying to stuff a bunch of coaching calls right in at the end. And so I just really ask you to be proactive in setting up your coaching calls, and to the degree that you can, and it's better for your learning anyway, to have them throughout the class rather than clumped at the end or anything like that. Okay?
Okay. And does it matter if it's like what time of the day?
You will see my link, and we'll get to that in a moment, and you'll see all my availabilities.
Okay.
And if for any reason my availabilities don't match your availabilities, email me and we'll figure something out. Yeah.
To be on time, present, and prepared for classes and one-on-one sessions. To do your best to make sure any technology needed for interaction is ready to go, and be patient and willing to reschedule in those rare instances when technology fails us. To make the most of your one-on-one coaching sessions, and send a report at least 24 hours ahead of each private coaching call, reporting on recent Constellation successes, recent Constellation challenges, 1-3 desired issues, questions, or themes for our call. Please be thoughtful about what is most important and how much time a topic is likely to take. Anything else you feel is important for Leslie to know before the call?
So I just want to say a word about that. Again, I've just observed the coaching calls are just something like, I got to make one, I got to have one, and then we get on the call and we sort of spin our wheels for about 10 or 15 minutes trying to find something that we can log into. And I've just found the students who really get all the juice out of those calls and all the money you've spent on this course have done this report. And don't sweat it too hard, just a little bit. It puts you in a position, there's 2 things it does. It lets us really leap into the call and just start working. But also it gives you a moment to step back and look and go, oh, this is confusing me. Or this, I'm fascinated about this. And in life, we never do this, right? So it's a real gift to be able to spend a moment and just write out a little email to me about 24 hours ahead of time, and then gives a chance to know what we're going to leap into for the call. I just see huge differences in the impact for students and what I can do for you when you do that. And it's not required. I won't cancel the call if I don't get the report. We will do the best we can with what we got, but it's just in service to you. Why don't you pick up the bullets from there?
To reschedule an appointment, barring an emergency, at least 24 hours in advance, or forfeit the appointment with no refund. To respect times when Leslie might be sick or on vacation and try to support her need for rest on occasion. To inform Leslie of times which you are away or sick. To stand in your truth. Ask questions if you don't understand something, and ask for the support you need for your learning. To contribute in your unique way to the creative container of the training, bringing your full self to the experience as much as work, learning, life balance allows. To respect and support your fellow students and the trainer while asking for such in return. To balance personal needs with those of fellow students and a productive adult learning environment, and to process or get help with emotional states in a way that supports the safe working environment of the entire group. To pay your fees on time. To work productively with Leslie in the case of any disagreement.
And I'm going to get a little bit more into that container setting stuff. And you don't need to read out all the numbers and everything here.
Technology info. We will be using Zoom for all our group classes and one-to-one coaching sessions. The internet link is, if the internet isn't available, then you can call in, phone, meeting, see Zoom guide, handout for additional information and troubleshooting details.
So before our first class, I'm going to send you out a Zoom guide. It's not as relevant to our one-on-one classes. Technology, in those last words, rarely goes bad on the one-on-one interactions, but the group, you need a little bit more information. So I'm going to send that to you beforehand. And it is useful to take this link because it's for everything. It's for your one-on-one calls. It's for the group calls. Bookmark it. Put it in your browser and bookmark it, and then you have it handy. Okay? Do go on.
Online.
This is another thing, by the way, to bookmark.
Online scheduler to make one-to-one coaching session appointments. For all Zoom classes and one-on-one coaching sessions, you will need reliable internet connection and a webcam. Zoom works on all devices, computer, tablets, and phones. Please let Leslie know ASAP if this will be a problem.
And that's it. You don't need to read the next bit.
Okay.
For those of you who have not handed this in to me, I really, really need it by the end of the weekend. And I really would like you to just take the time to fill in some of your background and your interests in the class. And then what I have not included here, but it's my apologies, I should have included it, but the signing the waiver, which is the last 2 pages to this. So if someone needs that, I can print it out tonight and bring it in. Just let me know later. But it's the standard waiver stuff, boilerplate, okay? Any questions about all this? And the nice thing is that now you have it. If you can't find the link, if you can't find what you need, it is in here, okay? Okay. A few more words about creating a container for the course. One of the things that's true about this course is you may be going, holy crap, there's a lot of different pieces to this training. I thought it was just we'd come here 4 days, 3 times, and that's kind of it. But between the one-on-one classes, coaching sessions, the Zoom classes, and the study groups, and the partnering, which we'll all get to on Saturday, there are a lot of different pieces. I want to apologize about that, but I found that each one of these pieces are really helpful for the learning to the degree that some people probably have an easy time tracking that sort of stuff. For other people, it's kind of not their strength. Totally get it. Want to support you in that. And most stuff is really optional. For certification, it's the residencies and the Zoom classes and the one-on-one calls and the study group, okay, as much as you can. And by the end of the weekend, you should have a handle on all this stuff. So don't feel like, if you're like, I don't really get everything she's talking about right now, don't worry. By the end of the weekend, we'll all have it in place. The thing I want to underline about some of the mutual agreements here is that we're co-creating this container. Like, I have the main job here at making this group work. And surprise, surprise, if you weren't sure about this, we're going to be doing vulnerable work here. And your stuff's going to come up. Yeah? You know, that grandfather who died in the, the Armenian genocide, it's going to come up, right? My job is to create a space where that's okay, right? Where that feels good to us to have that show up. And yet, I'm not the only one who can kind of make that happen. It's something that we all are sort of part of helping to make happen for each other, for ourselves and for each other. So I just want to say straight out, I've said this a few times, I've implied it, you're going to get triggered. You're going to get certain that someone else in this room doesn't listen well enough, doesn't try hard enough, doesn't show up properly, is the crappiest facilitator you've ever seen, is an unmanageable representative, whatever, right? And that there's going to be some reasons for you to have those feelings, and those judgments are going to rise. Can we just all pat ourselves on the back right now about that? I go, I'm going to have feelings about these people. Yeah. And some of them are going to have feelings about me, right? Okay. We're in a constellation together. It's already started, right? One of us isn't here. How much is, by the end of the weekend, how much meaning are we going to make about that? How is that going to affect the group when she shows up on Saturday and she hasn't had this conversation with us, right? Yeah. Now, in a corporate context, right, it reminds us that our job in the face of that is to be curious. Like, there's this one person who I keep on thinking is kind of not hearing me, doesn't get me. It's like not even trying to get me. Part of me is hurt and upset and really regressed to my relationship with my mother around that. And part of me is really curious about looking at that. Because whatever feelings, if the feelings are getting to a certain level of intensity, what I always say, the difference between having feelings about something and being triggered is that our feelings are out of scale to the context. Yeah, they're just bigger than the context really deserves. So once we have a place of being able to notice that, going, some of my reaction is not real, is not about what's going on, but it's about something that matters. So can I be curious about that? Yeah, and there'll be plenty of opportunities for us to explore those here. I really, really respect and honor to the degree that you turn to each other to sort of work this stuff out. That's always the healthiest way to go. If you need to come to me about something that's really irking you about the group, by all means do that. I am not going to rescue people. Okay? I'm not going to, the triangle, this is usually fairly common stuff, the perpetrator, victim, rescuer triangle. All of your families has at least one of them, I'm sure. Your workplaces, yeah. I'm not going to jump in and be the rescuer. But I am going to support y'all in being able to be curious about stuff and to be in interesting relationship with each other. And often what happens is the person in the first or second weekend that you're certain is like your nemesis, by the end is your best buddy, and you're like, oh my God, can we stay in touch, right? Yeah, it's kind of nice how that goes. Please take care of yourself. It's an adult learning space. One of the things, I'm doing a lot of emotional labor here. I've learned I cannot skip my lunch walks, which means that I don't go out to lunch with y'all till the end when we have a nice lunch together. I need time alone in between. You may have those needs as well. Try not to skimp those too much. And I give myself a break on candy bars for these residencies. I just need a little quick sugar and chewiness, the oral needs and the sugar needs. I just, breath of fresh air. This room gets a little airless, go out, get some vitamin D, do what you need. If you're the kind of person who really wants to do lunch with somebody, then make sure that's what you're doing, okay? This is therapeutic, but it is not therapy space. It's kind of an important thing to remember, right? Maintain respect with each other. This is a non-negotiable, my friends. No matter how cranky, no matter how triggered, no matter how much you're living in your great-grandfather's perpetrator energy in that moment, I really need to ask you to hold as a baseline being respectful of each other and being sort of basically polite, okay? There are occasions when people get triggered enough and they do things that later they're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? So if that happens, I'm gonna have chats with people. And the reason for that is that it is my job to keep this safe working, working for everybody, yeah, to keep the container going, okay? There are places, there are trainings you may have gone to where, whatever feeling you've got, if you're in a rage and you need to get up and knock back your chair and charge out of the room, then it's okay. It terrifies everybody, especially anyone like me who's got parents who fought like cats and dogs when I was a kid, right? So we need to have kind of a minimal level of capacity to manage our emotional states. Having said that, that's why the stuff on primary and secondary emotions, which I hope you were able to at least read the handout, is something we do the first weekend. Because developing some skills with that and noticing that is like huge. It's just an incredible gift. Me re-stumbling on Bert Hellinger's teachings on primary secondary emotions has been huge for my personal growth and huge for my capacities as a facilitator. Just really big. Okay. Also, this is an environment for messy, welcome practice. No one here is an expert, and when we receive each other's practice, it's not about getting perfect facilitating from someone else. This is tricky business. It's not going to be as much of a deal the first residency, but the second and third, when you start facilitating for each other, and you're in the client seat, and your fellow student is like in their process about how to facilitate, like it feels a little raw. It feels a little fingernails on blackboardy. Yeah. So I really want you to take care of yourselves around that. When you're working with students, I really want you to ask yourself, how vulnerable do you want to be? Mm-hmm. In a learning student's hands, do you want to put your biggest issue? Which is a hard thing to know. If you sit down and you say, I want to keep my desk clean, believe me, in about 10 minutes, we will be in the middle of World War II. It's just the way it goes. You may think, I did an easy, small issue, and we're all crying now. Yeah. So it's very hard to match, but take care of yourself on how, because we don't want this person to not be able to learn and to be messy and not do it perfectly, right? And we need to be able to have that space with each other. It is my job to be watching and making sure that's staying within limits. Okay? So if I see the facilitator struggling, the client feels like, oh my God, I'm trying to be a good client here, but oh my God, I will see that. Because it doesn't tend to be that subtle. And I'll just say, let's just take a pause here. Okay? So I'm the safety net around that. Okay? But it is a good life skill to be a resilient client. Yeah? I mean, one of the things that therapists often say is the point where the client lets the therapist be imperfect with them, we know we're getting somewhere, right? Because we're not projecting ideal parental things onto each other. Yeah. It's a good thing for couples relationships, letting our partners be imperfect, all this stuff, and letting ourselves be imperfect, right? You had a question?
You said it's a good thing to let yourself be an imperfect facilitator, participant.
All of the above.
Anything.
Okay.
But mostly I'm speaking to the clients in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Because if it's really, really, really hard to have someone who's not perfect in this role, then it makes it really hard for the learner to do the learning, and we're all here to do learning. And that's I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a tricky thing, and I'll try and be keeping, and we're going to talk more about that in the second residency. Please do not coach each other without an explicit invitation for feedback or advice, okay? We just really need to ask you to not try and become the teacher with each other around that, okay? You are always welcome to tell someone, that was awesome. I thought it was amazing the way you managed that moment. I couldn't have figured that out. That's always great. But please don't give each other feedback or advice. Relationship with me. I am not perfect. Okay? I do appreciate respectful, privately delivered feedback. Okay? So do ask for it privately rather than in the middle of the group. Okay? And that works better for the group anyway. But I do want it. I actually really do encourage it. I really want to model a kind of leadership in which there's transparency and accountability. Okay? And I get to grow. It also gives you, someday you're going to be the leader in the room with Constellation, representatives and whatnot. And I get to model you not having to be perfect when you do that too. Anyone at the couple here who were at the last Constellation, you were there as a client. You left though before it got interesting. You were there. Okay. Yeah. That was a challenging constellation for the
Mhm.
second one of the evening,
Mhm.
which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And I wouldn't say my facilitation was perfect that night by any means. It's an art. It's not a science. You're not going to do it perfectly. Constellations are constantly going to be throwing things at like, haven't run into this before. Okay. So I want to model that. So how does that all feel? Questions, concerns? Do you feel good about the container we're setting together? Anything I missed around an agreement that you would like to have in the room?
I think it just always pays to say something about how we hold the personal material we hear.
Yeah. You mean don't write it in your blog?
Yeah.
Names attached. Yeah. Thank you. Do you want to be more specific?
I personally don't feel concerned about it, but feel like it's always nice to just kind of put that. I'll just throw out how it is for me and modify it.
Yeah.
I get a lot out of hearing the experiences of humanity that people have when they're in constellations. So I actually like being able to share some general themes and personal learnings, but leaving out anybody's name or personally identifying information. Feels right for me.
Yeah.
Along that line, actually, when I first did the constellation work, my teacher recommended we just let it sit for a couple of days and don't talk about our personal constellation. And I don't know if that's something that you actually
It's a little
practice.
impractical to a certain degree in a training, but there are principles underneath both of these that I think are really, really critical. Rather than applying the rules, how do we apply the principles? So the first principle is that this is a sacred circle. So just notice, first off, we're going to laugh, we're going to be silly. It's kind of a misshapen circle, but it's a sacred circle. How do we hold that with some respect and reverence? And that, it's not so much the rule of confidentiality as how do I hold what I see with reverence when I leave the room? So of course you're going to go home to your partners and spouses and say, I had a wacky experience today. We were in the middle of the Armenian genocide, and for a moment there I thought I was going to die. I mean, there's going to be a certain amount of detail and whatnot, but how do you share it in a way that respects and holds the container? Yes, usually without sharing any names or anything like that. But we can share without sharing names and it's still disrespectful. So it's more how we're holding it in our heart when we share it. And I ask you to use that as your gauge. Your heart knows when we've moved into something that feels more like gossip or self-service than I'm discussing something in a useful way. So hold that reverence. And then the other principle, which you're referring to, and they're overlapping principles, by the way, is how do I hold with respect and reverence my own growth process in a constellation? And how do I keep it more in a soul place than an analytical breaking it down place? Now we do a lot of analytics and breaking down here because we're learning, right? But we all know there's a way, like, how to ruin a sunset. Explain it, right? No, not to a certain degree, scientists, but you know how it is. There's a way in which we can explain things and it robs something of its juice, right? Of its soulful quality. And that's really what people are getting at with that rule around don't talk about it for 2 weeks. Actually, I think that's telling people to not think of a pink elephant. But that was the original rule, though. The original rule was 2 weeks. And someone thought they heard it from Bert Hellinger, and then it got solidified, and it went viral. And it really is about how do I stay in a heart place with what happened and allow the unconscious unfolding to continue, rather than when the representative for my cousin Joey said that about her, what did he really mean about that? Because that could be the place we go. Often when I see people are coming, a client leaving with a friend or with a partner at the end of a constellation, I will especially lecture them because they're going to be so tempted to talk about it, right? They're driving home. What do you think the cousin meant by blah, 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 right? So, and it's interesting. I've heard, I don't do this, but I've heard teachers say, you know, I really like it when they all talk about it. So this is when I'm going to start to model the ranges of practices around constellations. Rather than a set of rules, I'm going to set out ranges of practices around that I've seen and what I do. And generally speaking, from my point of view, is I like to be kind of in the middle way and then have other behaviors available depending upon circumstances. You know? We are going to talk more about stuff here than we normally would if we were just working with civilians. Also, when we are doing, because we're going to discuss after constellations, because we have to discuss after constellations. But in that moment, I am going to ask people to ask more constellation-y questions rather than getting back into, you know, Grace's poor grandmother and how she lost her first baby. It's like, no. Let's let that continue to move. But if you have a constellation question about how we represented her grandmother, then by all means. Yeah? So thank you. Other agreements or thoughts about all this? And by the way, I'm asking you to find the underlying principles and then finding the way you want to structure it for yourself rather than giving you a bunch of rules, right? Because I want it to fit your personality, your style, and the kinds of clients you're going to work with who may be different. Corporate needs a really different way of doing this work than Rudramandir. It just has to, right? Yeah.
I think maybe I was already included in yours with no comments afterwards, except things that comes from you, which touches you, and
Right.
yeah.
Speak from your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So having said all that, we're going to take our first break in just a second because we're getting to the time where some people might want to just check their cars. And it's a good time for a break anyway. I want to invite you into an intention setting moment. Now again, I really want to honor that, you know, most of the people here have full-time jobs. Some of you have family members to take care of. Some of you have big traveling that you do to get here. Some of you want to take the occasional hike, you know, see a movie. So I really want to honor that you've even decided to try and fit this into your busy life. This is part of my busy life. This is not part of your busy life. Like you're adding it in. And in that context, I want to invite you into setting whatever intention you want to have about how you prioritize this. And how you prioritize the significant financial and time investment you've made in this. So that when you leave, you're like, I'm really glad I spent those dollars. I'm glad I spent that time. Around participation, being on time, showing up even if in the morning you're feeling like you kind of don't want to. And we do understand energy and attention waxes and wanes. We really want to respect all that. And just find a place in your heart about where you want to place that intention and what support you want to ask for from your ancestors and each other to be able to do this the way you want to do it. Okay. So, do you want to do a shorter break now and then another shorter break later, or make this our 15-minute-er? Because we are already at 11:45, and we are gonna. Sorry, lunch is usually 1 to 2:30. I'm sorry, I lied about that when you asked that question. It's 1 to 2:30 because we don't start until 10. So 1 to 2:30 usually. It can be off about 15 minutes, but it's always an hour and a half. Okay. So we're about in the middle of the morning. You want your full 15-minute break right now? Okay, 15-minute break, come back at 12. And I do ask when we do that, like, you know. Okay. So a couple of small things I just want to name. One is that I forgot to mention, which is security for the building, which is that that's already been unpaused, Kelly. Okay. Which is that please, 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 as much as you're tempted, don't let anybody into the building when you come in. Just be really polite, and they'll get upset with you because they belong in the building and da 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 da. You say, I'm really, really sorry, but I'm really trying to do my part for security. I can't let anybody in. I've done that, and people give me dirty looks. I just please don't. We have people who use the restrooms. They kind of hang out in the corridors. So I just really need to ask about that. The other thing is I put on your plate, your chairs. I forgot that I had this, which is just the topics for this weekend and the next 2 Zoom classes, which take place before the next residency. And so if you like writing notes on this, or if it's just a way for you to track what's going on with everything else, yeah, okay. Oh, and then finally, Christine, I just want you to just take a moment. You're going to remember our 7th person is Christine. Okay, Christine. She just wrote, because all she wrote before was, I'm going to miss the first few days. My mom broke her hand, and they're going to stabilize it with a metal screw and cast it. Yeah. She takes care of Grace and her young child when I'm not home, and it's her dominant hand. So she's been, she not only does she have to deal with taking care of her mom, but she's got an issue for the rest of the residency. So anyway, so please, good thoughts to Christine. I don't have a contact sheet. I'm gonna do that tonight and give it to you tomorrow. But you do have access to each other's emails through the emails that I've been sending out. If you want to send an email, it would be very nice. It's good systemic energy for fellow students to write and just say, we missed you today. Leslie said your mom broke her hand. So sorry about that. Hope to see you soon. So anything would be just really serves the group in a really, really good way.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's okay.
Okay. So I'm going to do some quick lectures here because this is me starting to put into play some of the core basic information that you need. Yeah, and if you need to actually put this in the middle or whatever you need to do with that. So I'm going to be sort of hanging out here and writing on this board. So this is kind of an overview. This is like if I could talk about constellations in 10 minutes and give you the overview, then this is it. Okay? Now, a lot of these points are going to be gone into in a great deal more detail in the coming months. Okay? But the first thing I just want to say, Bert Hellinger, who we've already talked about, he's a German former Roman Catholic priest, died at the age of 94 last week. He went off to South Africa. And he had lots of interesting mind-expanding experiences there, but one is working with the Zulus. And he was there 20 years. He learned their language. He was very much sort of involved in the community and did a lot of learning. and learned one of the things that he learned while he was there, that many of us learn when we hang out with traditional or indigenous communities, which is that the ancestors are real. And in a sense, they're alive and they're relevant to us. Okay. So if you have, issues with your neighbors or your local grocer or your priest, there are structures for working out those relationships and they affect your life. The same thing with the ancestors. Yeah. In Zulus, it's whenever you come with something that they suspect is an ancestral issue, they call this throwing the bones. I have no idea what that even means or what goes into that. But that basic wisdom, Bert Hellinger deeply integrated, and the sense of order, which we're going to be talking a lot about. And then he comes back to Europe in the 1970s. He's no longer a Roman Catholic priest. He's functioning basically as a psychotherapist in the world of, if any of you know this history, of the incredible expansion that took place in that period in the humanistic psychologies and all the different stuff, transactional analysis and Gestalt and Rogerian and Virginia Satir and NLP, and it was just an explosion. Up until then, it had been either Freud and Freud's disciples or behaviorism. That's basically what you had. And then all this stuff. And he's in the middle of it. And he's trying it all. He's doing it all. I'm going to get more into that later on. So this is the first notion. The ancestors are real. Then we have this thing that we hear a lot about called the field. Yeah, the field, or actually the knowing field. There's some sense of intelligence behind this. What we mean by that, we're not sure. It's got a structure, and it is non-local, is the way it's often put. In the sense of it allows things that are not proximate to each other to affect things. This is something that quantum mechanics figured out, that particles that are not near each other can affect each other. Well, right? Yeah. The butterfly effect, et cetera, et cetera. The way I like to say that I think of the field, and I'm going to go more into systems theory later on, because I've got a science background. And I find for a lot of our clients, having this background is really, really useful. Instead of talking about it, we don't know it, it's just all mystical and weird and that's not going to wash with them, right? So the way I think about it is, because science deals with fields all the time, magnetic fields, gravitational fields, yeah? And the notion that things affect each other over a distance. Yeah? The solar system, yeah? How does the moon affect the earth and the earth affect the moon? Yeah? There's a field, there's a gravitational field around them. So that everything is embedded in a field. Each of us, these markers, your memories, historical events, ancestors, the parts of your identity, everything is information embedded in a field. And somehow this work that Bert Hellinger, inspired by the Zulus, gives us a tool for gaining access to that information. So your grandma is information. The Cultural Revolution in China is information. Yeah? And by using somehow our intention, and this is like begging the question, what do you mean by intention? It's basically all the tools of constellation work, representatives, the interview, the healing sentences, all the stuff we're going to get into. But through some application of intention, we can get congruent information about things that are important to our clients. Now, in this context, our clients do come to us with symptoms. They come with issues. They come with problems, right? And we don't send them off to their therapist or their doctor. We say, there's something we might be able to help you with. And the notion is, the simple way I like to talk about this is that in the course of history of humans living on the planet, either in very personal ways or in large system ways, there is historical unresolved trauma. Again, this is nothing woo-woo. We know this is the case, right? The Holocaust, slavery, the Cherokee Walk of Tears, the killing fields of Cambodia, right? Or the grandmother who loses 3 children in a row to cholera, right? Whatever it is. These things happen that are beyond the scope of the individuals and the systems involved to integrate and deal with and honor and respect and heal in some way. And so that's when you have trauma. In one way, that's one way to define trauma. The organism, the system gets overwhelmed, it can't integrate it. And then that leaves the resonances of the suffering or the difficulty or the betrayal or the guilt, yeah, that are part of this thing. So these come along, they happen to people, right? And then they have babies. Which means that those babies are being raised with people who we might say today have PTSD, whether that's a personal experience or that's more of a culturally embedded experience. To the baby, that doesn't matter very much, right? And then those babies grow up and they have babies, and they grow up and they have babies, and they grow up and they have babies, and then there's us, right? So we get to today, right? Symptoms, as they are called, right? This is how they're related to this, because we still feel and experience, mostly unconsciously, sometimes consciously, the unresolved trauma. And we want to do our best, and I'm going to get to a lecture on belonging and conscience in a moment, but out of loyalty to the system and a need to belong, which is a basic survivor driver, right? To try and help, to try and fit in, to try and manage this somehow. So 5 generations of depression, you're not going to go out and be the first undepressed person in the family. It's too disloyal. Yeah? Or if there have been generations of guilt due to slaveholding, you're just not going to one day wake up and go, oh, I feel so innocent. It's just, yeah, we can't do that. And this is what we end up calling this arrow right here is called technically entanglements. Okay. Often in psychology, it's called identifications. Okay. But the jargon and it's kind of identification is really useful because it's the sense of identity. Entanglements is useful because that's how it friggin' feels. You know, just the other day I was talking to someone who said, yeah, I've been able to make total sense out of an experience I've been having in psychodynamic terms, but the truth is when I feel it, it feels like something happening to me that I have no power to stop. Yeah? Like being caught in the kelp that you can't get out. Okay. By doing this, it makes us feel innocent and like we belong. And I'm going to get more to guilt and innocence in just a moment. And this is kind of what we're going to be looking at. So the ancestors, the knowing field, how to set intentions, historical unresolved trauma, client symptoms today, that are expressions of entanglements of preceding trauma. And that the field we are dealing with, there's the whole field, which is the universe, and then there are subfields, right? The field we're generally dealing with in here, right, in this space, is what Bert Hellinger tended to call the family soul. Just kind of a nice way to put it. Or the ancestral consciousness of the family. Okay? So that's Constellations 101. This flows straight into the next section, which is on conscience and belonging. This is so important. This is just critical stuff. And this is summarized in this old saying, the child of thieves who steals does not feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And the child of thieves who does not steal feels guilty. Okay, that's this right there. Okay, and the reason why Bert Hellinger really focused in on this was because his first field for applying this work was where? Germany after World War II. Let's understand that Bert Hellinger spent time in a POW camp because he was a German soldier in World War II. He saw his country obliterated by the consequences of what the Nazis had done, right? He's a living embodiment of the dilemmas of guilt and innocence. And what he noticed over the years of doing this is that people could do the most heinous things and have a clean conscience about it. Because of how it is embedded in an experience of belonging. Yeah. And once we start to notice this, it lifts our own self-righteousness about our tendency to judge. We find a place where we can kind of look at it and go, oh, that's loyalty stuff. Yeah. What would it mean for those, I'm just going to make an assumption in the room, I apologize about where we're all at politically in the room. But if we looked at people who wore MAGA hats, the Make America Great Again hats, the red hats, as expressions of belonging and loyalty and the power of that, what might shift, yeah, in our conversation. Okay, so we feel innocent when we belong, guilty when we don't. This takes out the frame of moralism, and I'm going to say more about that in just a second. Invites a new level of non-judgmentalism. Now, here's the thing. Belonging is not a simple thing. So you've got your family, maybe, and you've got your religion, and maybe you've got your soccer team. Just as some examples. And we could, right? Your workplace, your best friends, your neighborhood, right? You've got all kinds of belonging going on here. And they come into conflict. The classic one is you're a good church-going American, but your daughter's soccer game is on Sunday mornings. What are you going to do? Right? Now, whichever you do, you're going to feel guilty with respect to the other one, right? But what it forces you to do is clarify, this is the positive aspect of this. It forces you to clarify your values and ethics. And, you can either say, you know what, this family goes to church and we're really sorry, but sports comes second under every circumstances. You've just clarified something. Or, you know what, religion's really important to us, but the sort of mental and athletic thriving of the kids is more important, and so that's going to come first. Or you even find a compromise to make both happen, right? But you've been put in a position, this is the good aspect of multiple belongings. It forces growth. So the question arises for the thief who does not steal, the child of thieves who does not steal, how did she ever get there, right? Well, the fact is even though she grew up in a family of thieves and that was part of the morality and it was taken for granted, she got exposed to other kinds of belonging in the larger culture where stealing is not right. And at some point, she had to take a look at these, right? You know, so my family, thieving is what we do, it's how we understand ourselves, but there's this larger sort of human thing where thieving is wrong, yeah? And then when she's at a certain age, she's got to ask herself the question and clarify her values and where she belongs. And if she does, she chooses not to steal, it's not that she's not going to feel guilty. This is kind of a key thing in Constellation's work. She's going to feel guilty with respect to her family. And, ready to go. Quote from Bert Hellinger. To be alive is to be guilty. And this is not a bad thing. We're not talking about conventional guilt. I hurt my friend's feelings, I feel bad. You should. You hurt her feelings, you should feel bad about that, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about, nor are we talking about that sort of bond of shame in alcoholic families. That's a whole different topic of guilt and inappropriate guilt and guilt we don't need, right? This is the form of saying we're always going to be managing different belongings. And we're always going to be violating something. Always. We cannot breathe and not violate the rules of something. So the job of maturity is to come into good relationship with our guilt. My friends, this is the work you're doing with your clients. Now, you may not say this out loud. For most of them, you're not going to, because they can't handle this. This isn't where they are. They're still dealing with being abused by their mom, yeah? You know, sort of, you're not going to say, well, you do, you know, you're not going to do that, right? But individuation and growth at some level is getting over the fantasy of innocence. Yeah. Just getting over it. Or even the more hidden one of needing our parents to be innocent or wanting to have innocent parents. Yeah. And I'm going to get into this a lot more. Yeah? And this is what Bert Hellinger means when he says it is necessary to take our mothers and fathers as they are. It's not the same as approving of them, liking them, being really glad they whacked us around, going to Thanksgiving dinner with them if they're still mean to us, all that sort of stuff, right? But it is taking our mothers and fathers as they are so we stop expecting the world to show up as our better mothers and fathers. Right? Why are you not being? No. And then we get to wrestle in our dignity with the world as it is in our proper place. So, class dismissed. This is the whole thing. Right? And again, we're going to get to client relationships and client-focused work and the necessity of being in rapport with your client in order to help their growth, not trying to impose this or shove this down their throats, because that doesn't work anyway, right? We're going to get to that.
Leslie, can
Yeah.
I just ask
Please.
you to say this sentence again? So the job of maturity is to come into, it's very funny that I can't remember what that is, with our guilt.
To mature, dignified relationship with our guilt.
I wrote down good relationship.
Become in good relationship with them.
Yay!
Thank you,
Note
team.
takers.
Thank you, team.
Yeah. Yeah, if you ask me what did I just say, there's zero chance I'm going to recover the same language. The good news is you may get a different version of it that's as good or better. Yeah? Okay. So, so material I want to get to. I'm going to see if I can get this done before lunch. That's what I really want to do. That's what I want to do. I'm going to hand out another handout. So the way I did this is that instead of creating a whole handout on the orders of love, what I've done again is create a worksheet, which is lists them, and then you can make notes on it or not if you prefer writing in your notebooks. But you have something to refer to in terms of what's Leslie's list for the orders of love, okay? Because if you will notice, if you've started to read stuff, particularly non-Bert Hellinger stuff, you will have run into this thing called the orders of love, and you will notice after a while that people's lists are different. Okay? This is because, ironically enough, for a person obsessed with systems, Bert Hellinger was not systematic. He's much more gestalty, which is why Love's Hidden Symmetry is critical reading and why it reads the way it does. And why I think personally that Love's Hidden Symmetry is a transmission. I think about it, the difference between students who've read that book and go back to it every once in a while versus the ones who never do are the ones who are able to shift from thinking psychodynamically about systems to being systemic thinkers, because he's doing case studies and diving you into it. But he never systematizes what he does. It's all the later thinkers who look at it and put these things into lists and whatnot, which means I'm free to create my own list, which is quite convenient. So, Ordnung der Liebe. Very German talk here. You don't like the word order, rhythms, patterns, that's all we're talking about here, okay? Don't get hung up with this word. I rather like it, but some people let themselves have whole issues about it. What they are, they're general principles of healthy systems, okay? Therefore, they are what systems are coping with not having. So when these orders are not in order, that's what you're dealing with when you're doing a constellation, yeah? It is what I would call a lightly held diagnostic tool. So again, think I keep referring to you because you talked about corporations, but it's corporations in some way make these things clearer than families do sometimes. So it's useful to reference businesses and organizations a bit more. You can go with your list of orders of love around belonging and seniority, blah, blah, blah. I'll get to that list in a moment. And you'll hear HR and finances won't work together. That's the problem. That's the symptom from the other day. Is it a belonging issue? Is it a seniority issue? Is it a balance of giving and taking issue? Yeah? So it can function as a diagnostic tool. If you're having problems in your family, is it a belonging issue? Is it a seniority issue? Yeah, was it one of these things? Yeah? Yeah? But it is a little bit lightly held. The reason, well, I'll get into that moment. Why? Let me get to that in a moment. So my list is on the handout. There really is no order here except the first one does come first. Okay, honoring what is. In one place I saw it called respecting reality, which I thought was a kind of a great way. Like, this is how it is. This is what is here. Dad's just died. Like, yeah. And in some ways, all the others are subsets of this one. Honoring what is. If this gets to be too highfalutin talk and you're chatting with clients, everyone understands the phrase ignoring the elephant in the room. Yeah? And what happens when someone finally speaks about the elephant in the room? It's basically the space we're in here. Yeah? Okay. So mom's got cancer and she's probably going to die in about a month. Yeah? We have 4 generations of child molesters. Okay. Yeah. Now, why does this go off whack in families? I mean, you can imagine they got overwhelmed. It was too much. It was too big. It was too hard. There were cultural rules against it. All kinds of things go into the reason why families or organizations or communities or countries can't or don't do it. And then we're here 200 years later bowing to all the dead of the Civil War. Yeah? That sort of thing. Yeah? So we're doing it a long time later. Because part of what we need to honor is that it wasn't able to be honored at the time. For reasons that we get. Yeah? Okay, belonging is the next one, very critical. In families, so this is talked about in very simple terms, and it's not as simple as it sounds. In some ways it's very simple, in some ways it's not very simple. The simple bit is if you're born into a family, that's the end of the deal, you belong. You can't be suicided out, you can't be adopted out, you can't be written out of the well out, you can't go off to Morocco and never talk to them again out. Now families obviously frequently will get estranged or kick people out or forget about people. And that's often what we're dealing with are these exclusions, right? And how do we re-include the perpetrator who got kicked out or the first child who was adopted away and no one ever talked about, et cetera, yeah? Now there are other forms of belonging in families, and this is going to be part of what you'll be noticing over the course. I can't give you a set of rules for this, but one is, for instance, perpetrators and victims always belong to each other. So if you have someone who perpetrated against your family or was a victim of your family, then you're going to belong to each other, for instance. Yeah? And then belonging gets much more complex in non-family systems, and we'll get to that later. But for instance, in businesses, employees have temporary belonging, just for instance. Yeah. Which often is one of the ways in which things go awry. Yeah. Yeah. For instance, if you do a big firing or a layoff in a business and you don't do it well and with respect, they'll energetically stick around, and you'll be dealing with the consequences of that layoff for another generation. Yeah, it's funny. So belonging's a kind of a funny thing, but in families there are some straightforward qualities to it, which is nice. Seniority, mostly about who came first. Another way to talk about this is precedence. So when it comes to people, it's, birth order, really. Yeah, so grandparents are senior to grandchildren. Older siblings are senior to younger siblings, but only a little bit. Yeah. Mostly just enough to say this is the firstborn and the secondborn. Precedence is an interesting thing. New systems have precedence. So the married couple, their bond now is and new family is precedence over their originating families in their lives. How often does this not get quite completed?
Yeah.
Where the family sense of the couple's continuing obligation to mom and dad is the complaint is they're not paying enough attention to mom and dad, when actually their first priority is supposed to be to each other and to their new kids. Yeah. But it's also true with divorces, the new system. Yeah. The new family has precedence over the old one, which makes for a lot of pain. And we're going to get into that later. Seniority gets a lot trickier in organizations. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. It just gets does that mean that the janitor who's been there 30 years has precedence over the new CEO? Yeah. Yes, in some ways. No, in most other ways. Right? So it's seniority is a much trickier thing in organizations. I mean, the new CEO who doesn't acknowledge that they're new usually ends up into trouble pretty fast, right? And doesn't acknowledge all the people who've been there longer, even though they now have the position. So, okay. What I call role in system. This is if you've ever seen those lovely moments where, you know, you're getting towards the end of a constellation and things are being worked out much better. And, you know, you have the client say, oh, this is my grandmother. That is my mother. That is my older sister. I am your granddaughter. I am your daughter. I am your sister. And everyone goes, right? Because roles get confused all the time. I mean, the famous one is children becoming the parents and parents becoming the children. Or if there's an older child who is lost somehow, very frequently a next child is going to be called the eldest or the first when they actually aren't. It tends to feel really bad. So role in the system is really, really important. Another one that happens a lot is if you or your parent has a sibling who died in childhood, right? The permanent impression in the family is that this is a baby who died. So you come along later, you hear about, oh, mom had a younger brother who drowned or something like that, very tragic. And then I'll say, oh, that's your uncle. And they'll start to cry. And you're his niece. Because it's just a permanent baby who died. And the notion that this role thing is really, really useful. Really important. Complex one, balance of giving and taking. Systems like to have the feeling that there's a balance in giving and taking, okay? There are two different ways in which this works itself out. One is, say, in a couple relationship or a business partnership, yeah? Or in a transaction, like I pay you $25 and you give me a pair of jeans, yeah? In peer interactions, that the giving and taking is more or less equal and stays in some kind of flow. When you're dealing with couples relationships where they are in trouble, often this is what you find is problematic. Often goes out of whack in businesses as well. Particularly when partners start businesses together, if the balance of giving and taking isn't being well maintained, okay? So that's one way. It's basically contemporary in time. Yeah? The other one is more in terms of the circle of life, right? So parents give, children take. Children are not required to give to the parents to even the balance. The way in which that gets resettled is that they give to their children. Yeah. Parents don't give a child a bill at 18 and say, this is how much you cost me, right? And if we have a really big sense of not having been given properly to us by our parents, then that sense of having to give too much to our children can be really hard, because we feel like we didn't get this way, and now we're having to give this way. Yeah. A very tricky business across generations. This is why we have to take our mothers and fathers and the life they gave us as it was. Very critical business. We're getting a little self-awareness groans going over in the corner. I see a few nods, a few question marks going on in the eyes. Because of course, there is some obligation if our parents get sick to be a good daughter or son and to help our parents out, okay? There is a properness to that. But it's not to balance this, because we can't. Yeah. It's just an expression of the relationship. Yeah. Here are my parents, they're getting sick. I can help, I'll help. Yeah. And it's very important when that happens, even if we're changing the diapers of our mother in a nursing home, right? That we remember that she is senior to us, and we got life from her and not the other way around. That's why it's like this. The life goes one way, not the other way. Okay? I've just been thinking some about this. This is a new insight for me, that this shows up in other places. In a certain amount in founding businesses or in teaching lineages. Yeah. In one sense, we're peers. Like, I teach, you write me a check. Right? We're peers. On another level, my job is to give you learning, and the balancing that out is for you to send that on to your clients or to your students or whatever someday. And that I never kind of get that back, because I got it from them, from their, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that sense of the circle of life version of things shows up a little bit more than is totally appreciated. And generally what we're looking at here is relationships that've gone awry because someone's doing all the giving and someone's doing all the taking. And the system's going kind of nuts because it doesn't work. Okay, the last one I'm going to do, and this isn't all of them. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just one question,
please.
Because it's always okay, you have to take something. If I'm doing this, you cannot do it for nothing because of the balance that it has to be there.
Right.
But is it gratitude not also, that's a form of giving?
Sure,
right?
it is. It can be. You got to be careful that's, I'm giving you gratitude. And you're like, well, I can't pay the rent with your gratitude. So you got to be careful that it's actually in balance. There's a genuine balance going on. There are always ways of thinking about this. For instance, I hope immediately you guys are going out to your friends and saying, I'm doing this thing called Constellations and I need people to practice with. It's perfectly okay that you do that for free. You're not in some tricky place because if you're not getting a check for your work, then they can't get the full benefit of what you're doing, and there isn't a balance of giving and taking. They are giving by letting you practice with them and be inelegant. Yeah, because they're your friends. They're going to give you a break. Right? Hopefully, you're not going to choose the friend who's going to give you a hard time about this, right? Right? Someone who's going to support your learning and wants to be part of that. And you're going to give by giving your best in the moment. Yeah? And then once you notice you're doing someone some good, you might ask for $25, right? Just a little bit. Which people will go, this is an awesome deal because I'm only spending $25. And she's like, she knows a lot. Yeah, it's not perfect, but I'm getting a lot out of it. Yeah. So that sort of balance of giving and taking. Other places like I'm doing a generosity-based, every year I do a generosity-based offering, sliding scale this time, the way I'm setting it up. And so there are going to be people who are going to pay a level that is not remotely commensurate with the amount of work that I'm putting into it. but I'm doing it because I kind of understand why I need to do a generosity-based event once a year. And how that fits into my larger business model. Yeah. And I'm extremely careful of, I cannot tell you how scrupulous I am about this in business. I had a really good friend, Dan Booth Cohen, kind of offered to me his mailing list for the intensive. 2,000 people. Very nice thing to give. And he says, I'm not using it, just use it. They need to hear from us, use it. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm saying yes. It's awesome. And I want to make sure that I'm going to give back to you by putting listings of your business in our promotional materials, and naming that you gave this gift to the whole group. And if we have a few bucks, I'm going to send you a few bucks. And he says, wow, that wasn't necessary, but you're right. I was giving you too much. Because I didn't want to screw up our relationship, right? Sometimes we often think of this, making sure I'm getting enough out of something, and that's true. But sometimes it's not letting someone give you too much, because that's hidden indebtedness. And it fucks up relationships. Excuse my French. Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Now, you don't want to be over scrupulous about it, right? Sometimes I don't let people give to me. That's a totally different issue. Those are one of my healing issues. Yeah. But in the realm of business, I try to be really careful about this. Okay, last one. Addressing wrongs. And in parenthesis, without revenge. In some ways, systems are a little eye for an eye. Not explicitly, but they really don't like it when people get away with stuff. Yeah? If there was someone up in your lineage who massacred a bunch of Indians, and never had a moment's justice around that, there's a decent chance you are still wrestling with that guilt in the system. It remains as an incomplete thing. Now, I really want to argue, I'm a big fan of restorative justice. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it later. It's a wonderful new model for doing justice, really different from just the merely punitive approach, to, the punishment approach to wrongdoing. So please don't see this as, if people don't get punished, systems don't like it. What systems do like is that somehow it's been acknowledged and recompensed in some way. Yeah? And when people get away with stuff, it lingers in the system very badly. A funny one that has shown up from time to time in constellations is medical malpractice. An ancestor who ended up injured or dead due to a doctor who just flat out made a mistake. And of course, they got protected by the system or whatever. The doctor, when you finally represent the doctor, they are so ready to say, I did that wrong. I am so sorry, the consequences for you and your family. And that the heart longs to be able to stand up and name and take responsibility for stuff. This is why I often call this taking responsibility. Guilt is not a problem. How we deal with it is the problem. You may have been in a system at some point, being a representative, where you're going, it's everyone else's fault but mine. You seen these? Yeah? Everybody else's fault, not mine. And then something shifts, people get rearranged, things get said, blah, 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 blah. And you're feeling in yourself some raising of your dignity, where finally you're able to say in the role, it happened. I did that. It feels really good. It feels real. It's like one of the most satisfying roles you can have is to be a severe wrongdoer and feel your dignity returning as you can take responsibility for something. It's really sweet. It's a great role. Please never be upset if you're in the perpetrator role. There's so many opportunities for your own personal growth when you're in those roles. Okay, so this is my list of the orders of love. Now this is the point where I say, just put a little caveat in for families. Orders of love are not absolute for all systems, although there are some principles that go across systems. Different kinds of systems organize themselves and are ordered in slightly different ways, sometimes extremely different kinds of ways. And you need to know the system you're dealing with to facilitate properly in it. Okay? For instance, the bit I said about belonging and seniority, you got to apply that differently in an organization than you do in families. If you start thinking in terms of families when you're working with an organization, you can really screw up an organization with your facilitation. Also think about natural systems. The justice pieces, natural systems don't care that the tree fell or that the tiger ate the gazelle, right? It's got a totally different around this stuff. It's just got a different kind of, relationship to this last thing around fairness and justice that we as human systems have. Which circles back to what I wanted to say before about innocence and belonging, is that we care about morality, right? Right? I don't want to play the game here that if, father molested his daughter, we're so non-judgmental that, there's no wrong in the world. That's, what this work does is gives us a place to be able to look at it dispassionately and find resolutions that actually work better for systems, so that the perpetrator can stand up, and we're, full of love for that perpetrator and say, I did that, I take responsibility. Anything else I wanted to say about that for now? Oh, and this comes back to the lightly held diagnostic tool that I said, the lightly held part. Sometimes what happens in constellations, it's really clear. You have to do a lot of intervening. Two steps back. Some of the stuff is not very PC. It comes into conflict with some of the ways in which we are taught about what are the correct ways for families to be in relationship with each other. For instance, you have to forgive your father. Or parents apologizing to their children. They don't really fit in here very well, and we'll get more into depth around that stuff. Very often representatives will be moved to do things that violate these orders because they're part of the conventions that we have around us, around the right thing to do in those moments. And you have to really gently say, whoa, slow down. Totally appreciate it, but no. We'll get to that, a lot of that. However, every once in a while, someone does one of those moves, or you initiate one of those moves, and it doesn't fit in one of these, and you can tell it's the right move for the family. And they shouldn't happen very often. They shouldn't be your go-to. They should be very rare. But every once in a while, I'm like, yeah, I think I forgive you is the right sentence here. Breaking all the rules. But you can just feel it. It feels good. So this is a diagnostic system. Please know these and understand these. I'm going to be inviting you as you watch constellations to have this sheet in front of you and be noticing where these orders are arising and where the violations of them are arising. have them as kind of a basis for the work, and until they become kind of muscle memory. They're just kind of there. You're not even thinking about them anymore. And then every once in a while, you'll just notice, oops, the system seems to need something a little different. And that's the right order. Yeah. It is now 1 o'clock before I send you off. How are you all doing? Any questions? I just downloaded sort of the basics of Constellation's work here. Between this and the conscience and belonging and the basic overview of the field and entanglement.
I don't know if I really understood what you were saying with the at the end was I forgive you, that it's sometimes not appropriate or not.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
does it mean so if the overall morality is whatever, if somebody abused,
Right.
father abused the daughter,
Yeah.
so she's not what in this case?
Yeah, so by and large, we're not into forgiveness in families. And here's the reason why. The original meaning and understanding of the word forgiveness is I proclaim and give forgiveness to you. So now you don't have to go to jail or pay me back or suffer shaming or whatever. It's something a senior does to a junior. The original source is kings forgiving the debts of serfs and whatnot. Yeah. So if you've injured me as a peer and I say I forgive you, I'm putting myself in a place of power with respect to you. This is a very hidden part of the forgiveness move. Yeah. It's actually taking, yeah. This is particularly fraught for the child who is always junior to the parent, which is why the parent's limitations were so painful for the child. And they can't ever change that they remain junior to the parent. So I forgive you, Dad, puts them here. This has negative effects on the soul. For us to do that to our parents. It's just sort of step into forgiving your parents and feel what it does to you in terms of the flow of life. Yeah.
It's a superior position.
Yeah. And you lose access to all kinds of stuff. So if you're down here, the parents here, ancestors, right? And what's good for you is all this life to come down to you. What happens when you move up here? There's a funny way in which now you're functioning as a rolling stone as yourself, separate from all this life. This is the solution our culture provides to people who've been abused by parents. To separate, to get away, to find a new family, a better family, right? To go off to Morocco or San Francisco, that's what I did, right? And we understand the need for that. We have no judgment about it. But what we're doing in Constellations is that we're meeting the place where has diminishing returns. That movement has done as much good as it can do for the client. And they're still not able to get a job or find a boyfriend. They've got chronic illness, whatever it is. And what you and I know is that they are separated from the flow of life of their ancestors. Mm-hmm. Now, the tricky bit is how do we help people have belonging with their families in a way that helps them still feel safe and they can really be themselves. And they're not caught up in these entanglements and loyalty pieces, which, by the way, the more separate they get, the more they're probably entangled with the loyalty pieces, right? They're still attracting people like their mom and dad into their lives. Their boss is just like their dad, whatnot. How do we help them find a good place with respect to all this suffering, all this difficulty, all this violation, yeah? Take their parents as they are, without needing them to be any different, and yet still be able to be themselves. Yeah? This is the trick. And the forgiveness movement is actually a separation movement. Yeah, by and large. So the movement is something more like, the language in constellations is something more like, and we'll be doing these healing sentences a lot, is dear mom and dad or dear ancestors, thank you for my life. I take my life fully as you were able, whatever you were able to give, and whatever else, I leave that with you with respect. And then we turn our backs, not in a turn our backs kind of way, but so that the dead can be behind us or the parents, and we can face the direction we need to go. And the sentences to the ancestors, please bless me as I choose a different way. And that's the movement rather than, that's the way to get to address the fact that we may have been quite abused. Yeah? Yeah.
So
And
could you
it's
also
take
add
steps, you
something-
take your time,
Yeah.
you rapport, we're gonna get into all that. You're gonna get clients who are not ready for any of that stuff. And we wanna honor that, sorry.
So could you also add something with, I leave you with your wrongdoing, and you have to carry the burden of your wrongdoing or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, the slightly less freighted words, but particularly if you read Love's Hidden Symmetry, you're gonna get a lot of these examples in there. Things like, the burden of what you did, I leave with you.
Mhm.
And usually by that point in the constellation, the parent has gone, that's good.
Mhm.
What I did, you leave that with me.
Yeah, and I feel it's like really,
Yeah.
you can imagine the package what you
Yeah.
are getting.
It's
there.
totally a package.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll show you a little ritual constellation where we can feel taking the packages. Oh, the client comes with all of these burdens and then giving all the packages back. It's very much like that. Yeah. But it still lets us stay junior so that we can be the recipients of all this life. Yeah. As Bert Hellinger puts it, we can't expect a child to do this, right? But from the place of adulthood and perhaps a little distance, we are able to, there's a sentence here, I'll find it, take what life our parents were able to give us and take it fully, and everything else we leave with them. Yeah. And then often the sentences is, and please bless me as I choose a different way. So if they were alcoholics, my life would be without alcoholism, or if they were abusers, my life is honoring, protecting my children, or if their way was just depression and heartache and and I will enjoy and thrive in my life. Yeah. Sometimes you'll articulate the specific thing you're leaving behind, depending upon the constellation and what the client is asking for. Thank you for those questions. I love having these conversations because these are the conversations, if you have them with clients, these conversations can go so wrong. Yeah, we had a big groan here, right? They're nuanced, they're contextualized. We never want to be in a position to make the classic young constellator mistake is, oh, the client is being too big with respect to their parents. I'm going to make them bow to their abusive father. And then those people come to me and say, I felt really traumatized by my constellation, right? You don't want to apply these authoritatively. And again, generally you're going to start here, right? So before there's any taking your place with respect to your parents, you're going to be honoring that there was abuse, right? That sort of stuff. But also, they were abused, and then they barely survived Poland in 1943. Oh shit. Okay. Any other quick ones? Because it's 1:10 and I want to send you off. Okay, please be back here at 2:40. That means in your seats, ready to go at 2:40, not like just having rushed back in from your restaurant. So you have a little time to nest and go to the bathroom and stuff like that.